I would like to go back to a subject which I only touched on briefly before, and that is the one to do with the Bridewealth, which has been very topical in Zimbabwe because recently the Minister of Justice stated in Parliament that government had noted that there was a spike in the abuse of the practice of Bridewealth, with lots of people aiming at petty wealth accumulation. I don't know how you responded to that. I was quite surprised. I had no idea that this is the type of work that is happening in the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, that they are looking into the practices during marriage ceremonies, receiving reports, what are people charging, and doing comparative analysis of how much money is being made. I don't buy it. I do not buy it. I don't know if you do. I do not think that there is any quantitative research data in the Ministry of Justice that reflects such a spike. In fact, from the readings that I have done, pet accumulation through bridal wealth has been happening since before the colonial era. Every single practice is subject to abuse. So I don't think that is true. I don't think there's anything that is new there. Some of you may be aware that last year or the year before, there was a woman who actually approached the Constitutional Court asking for direct access in order to get an order of court to ban or abolish the practice of bridal wealth altogether. And so in this video, I really want us to try and look at Roora, Lobola, or bridal wealth from the viewpoint of African institutions not applying a foreign, Western, or capitalist lens which mischaracterizes bridal wealth as commodification of the girl child or the buying of a person, because there's never been any practice in our society which confers all the rights sounding in a person upon the payment of a certain amount of money. There's never been such treatment of a human being as property. There's just no such practice. And this is the reason why often it is people who come from countries who've got a history of chattel slavery, a history of treating people as commodities, who look into African practices and say, oh, yeah, you are buying people here. There's an exchange of goods and wealth, and a person is moving. There's purchase of persons. And we need to do more than that. We need to, I would caution people from falling prey to applying a logic that is foreign to African institutions and cultures. So since I insist that this is not commodification, I'm going to give a list of reasons why I think Lobola is done, why it persists, and I'm going to give at least the modern reasons, not necessarily the ones from the pre-colonial era, the ones that I think actually account for this practice rather than the mischaracterization of bridal wealth as purchase of persons. And I have to give a caveat before I get into my reasons that as the person who is giving you these thoughts, I myself, whilst I've participated in quite a few marriage ceremonies in my capacity as an uncle or a relation, I myself have never been married, so there is that. So I would say the first reason that we have got a Lobola or bridal wealth is payment for what I would call consideration of loss. This is acknowledgement of the fact that the family of the bride is actually losing such huge value in terms of a person they love their company, they love having them around. So there are those abstract non-material losses they will suffer. But more than that, they will suffer material loss in terms of her capacity to generate income, her labor. These are all things that are going to benefit the family of the groom. And the idea behind bridal wealth is an acknowledgement of the fact that if there was ever to be a calculation of just how much money is being lost just by the fact of this daughter leaving her own family and moving to the grooms, it would be infinitely calculable. It is impossible to pay or to calculate just how much money would account for the gain that they are going to enjoy. However, the fact that actually calculating the loss is beyond what the realm of possibility, that does not stop the expression of appreciation of the fact that you are suffering such a huge loss, but you are still willing to suffer it just so that there is a building of kinship. Therefore, please accept a token of our appreciation of your willingness to suffer such a huge, incalculable loss. So one has to be aware of the fact that there's acknowledgement. We can never pay for this, right? This is why you sit and you agree that, okay, what can we pay at least to show our gratitude for the fact that such an important and valuable human being is being allowed to join our family. So that is the first That is the first reason I would say, the acknowledgement of loss, right? And the second reason I would say is the establishment of a relationship of indebtedness. In other words, you find in some settings it is actually taken as offensive to just pay the entire amount. Like you get there, you are charged money, then you say, okay, here's your entire amount. Can I have my person? I am going. That is frowned upon, because that does look in some respects like this Western notion of, I have come to pay for my person, give me my person, I'm going. Normally, or in a lot of cases, these payments are done throughout one's life, because you're supposed to always be in a state of indebtedness. Because just like my point number one, the idea is this can never be fully paid for, and one way in which you acknowledge it can never be fully paid for is this relationship of sort of indebtedness in perpetuity, perpetual indebtedness to the family of the bride, because you have gained so much. So those, I would say, are the first two reasons, and that is nothing to do with commodification of the person or the girl child. The third reason I would give is that of a show of seriousness. And the example I usually give is the fact that if anybody decided to join a political party today, an association, a club, it is likely they'll be asked to pay some nominal fee. There's always a request that, can you at least show that you are invested in this new relationship in a manner in which other people are not? Because it can't simply be a matter of, okay, you want this new relationship with us as families, shake hands and you go. Can you actually show that you are serious? So that nominal fee, normally in other settings, read in the marriage setting as token of appreciation. And so this builds the kinship, in terms of which there is that what I call the perpetual indebtedness to the family of the bride. The fourth reason I would give is a show of capacity. The family of the bride are taking care of their daughter, and they need to be assured that the family that is going to be hosting their daughter has the capacity to take care of her. And that is part of this show of the fact that, do not worry, when your daughter comes, she will not starve. We'll take care of her, and in this ceremony, we'll actually provide some material evidence of the fact that we'll be taking care of her, and that is built into bride price. Bride price also acknowledges the role of the mother as the caregiver, very special payments that are given to the mother herself. And then overall, there's a social legitimacy function, which is why in a lot of African societies, you actually refer to the parent with through the name of their child, because through marriage you have children, and then you get a lot of social legitimacy from that, acceptance of identity. And so there's that other large role. But from overall, you can tell there's a large complexity of reasons and rationale that undergird this idea of marriage, and it is not commodification, it's not transfer of property rights. This is the reason why whenever a married woman passes away, ordinarily she cannot be buried until her family actually arrives as part of proceedings. They give their consent, because she remains a member of her own family. Even if you paid this token of appreciation, it has not transferred full rights to you in terms of this personal property, what people try to claim that bride price does. It does not, and the practices actually show that there is no such transference. Now, in Zimbabwe, after 1980, when there was passed the Legal Age of Majority Act, it was no longer legally required for anybody to pay bride price to the family of the daughter, because once a woman becomes a major, and in Zimbabwe, after the Constitutional Court ruling, you cannot legally marry anyone below 18. So once a woman is above 18, there's no legal requirement for you to pay bride price. But it has persisted since the 80s, because it is a social norm that has got a lot of power. And in fact, when it comes to customary law, it is required, because without it, there is no marriage that is recognized in terms of customary law. So when the minister comes out and says the law does not require bride price to be paid, he is referring to general law. We have customary law, and by its nature, customary law is built on widely accepted practices that have also been practiced over such a long time that they have got wide acceptance in the community, wide acceptance, long practice. And because of that, you cannot actually get married in terms of custom. All research into marriages in Zimbabwe always show the fact that customary marriages are by far the most popular marriages as compared to the civil marriages. And that is because customary law really speaks to our personhood. So paying bride price is really akin to paying a tip at a restaurant, for instance. It's not exactly the same thing, but you decide, are you going to pay? But in certain societies, like in the US, in a lot of cities, there's such a strong social norm around paying of tips that if you do not do so, then you are frowned upon socially. So in terms of our society, Lobola will continue to be paid because socially there's such a strong social norm that begs payment of Lobola that you don't necessarily need the law to require it. But in terms of the way we understand Bridewealth, I think we have to be more honest about the real reasons that make it so popular, so that we do not accept these sort of Western generated ideas that this amounts to a selling of people or selling of the girl child.